and innovation, as Paul mentioned. And the reason that I'm here apart from to welcome you is to set a little bit of a scene before you get into the real detail of the council offices. And the reason I mention the economic development strategy is to explain to you as business people that we're on a 20-year journey. We've been on the journey for over 5 years now, but we're talking about a 20-year journey of a plan, a 20-year blueprint for reinvigorating this economy. And for those who were here way back in the day, in the 80s, 90s, etc., they know that there's been some tough times. And so that's why this council, together with the business community and others, including the university, put together this economic development strategy. And there's a number of elements to that, and I won't go through all of them, but essentially the bottom line was that we wanted to do our bit to help grow the economy. And you hear, that all of the time from various politicians and the like. But there was a real considered plan to grow the economy. And so back in the day in 2013, when the plan first came up, we said our economy was $13 billion, and we wanted to grow that to $33 billion in the following 20 years. So by 2033, we wanted to have a $33 billion economy. We also wanted to do a number of other things, but just to have a think about it, for the 30,000 businesses here on the Sunshine Coast, small businesses in the main, growing that economic pie, creates opportunities for you. And it wasn't just a plan. We've invested many millions of dollars in delivering that plan. And that's to do with major infrastructure projects, and we've got the big shiny stuff, the new one-way project, the solar farm, the CBD, multi-billion-dollar CBD coming out of the ground. But we've also had some great investors here on the Sunshine Coast, with the Kwana Town Centre, Aura down the road, Harmony just across from us. So there's a lot of things happening here in the region, and they're underpinned by those major projects, but also by the small businesses who have the confidence in the region to invest in this region, create jobs, create opportunities. And what you'll hear today from the various officers is where those opportunities might lie in your relationship with council. But the reason I wanted to explain that sort of overarching context is to hopefully give you the confidence for you to continue to invest. So if you get the opportunity with council, that's fantastic. But if that opportunity doesn't present itself for whatever reason, I still want you to understand that council is investing hundreds of millions of dollars over the coming years in important infrastructure to get this regional economy humming along. And the good news is that we had a report card done by KPMG just a few months ago that was released. And it just gave us, and that was our commitment to this region and to you as business owners. And what that report card showed us was that we are very well on track with those goals. And so, you'll have seen in the economy that the unemployment rate has been reduced significantly to around about the 5% mark from up around when it was 10%. Youth unemployment has been reduced from 14% down to under 10%. Household incomes are improving. And so there's a lot of good news around. Now, I'm not standing here saying to you that it's perfect, but I'm just saying that we're well on the way in this 20-year journey to making a huge difference to the economy. So the report card, just on that one headline number, which was going from 13 billion to 33 billion over 20 years, we're now sitting at over 17 billion in the economy. And what with those extra $3.5 billion or thereabouts that's running around the economy is the thing that is creating jobs and opportunities, reducing unemployment rates, and underpinning that business confidence that's around. And hopefully you will have seen that in your travels over the years. So this isn't just by happenstance. This is part of a significant and considered action by council to make sure that this economy creates the opportunities that all of you want with us today. So can I encourage you over the coming years or whatever to keep an eye on what is happening in the region, not just those major projects, but all of the other initiatives that Council are running with to help improve the economy and create those jobs. And you will see over time that as business confidence grows, there'll be even more and more opportunities. Now, I can't stand up here and guarantee to you that just because we've got a plan and because we've got buy-in from a lot of the people here today, that everything's going to be all rosy, because we can't necessarily influence, you know, some of the global challenges that we've got facing us. And so whether it's the trade wars or, you know, anything else that's coming up, I can't stand up and say that, you know, we're protected against that. But what I can commit to you is that over the next 15 years or so of the remaining plan, and I'm sure there'll be more to come, Council will continue to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in this region, particularly in infrastructure. We will be looking to our local businesses to take up a lot of the slack in those opportunities. I think we're currently sitting at about 75% of our work goes to local businesses, something thereabouts. So it just shows you that we have a commitment to you that we'll continue to drive this economy as hard as we possibly can to get the opportunities that you're all looking for here today. So on that note, I'll hand it over to the experts so they can talk you through the various presentations. But I hope you get something out of the presentations. I do know that last year there was a couple of businesses that attended and ended up getting some significant business with Council. So there are lots of success stories out there. Hopefully over the coming years you're going to be part of that journey as well. Thanks very much and have a great day. Cheers.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. This year, the Slido.com, if anyone wants to download that app on their phone now, go to #SB18. You can ask questions through that. We'll put all the questions together at the end. You can still ask questions throughout if you like. But importantly, for anyone streaming as well, it's an opportunity to ask questions if you couldn't be here today but are still interested in what Council has on offer. And when you get in there, you'll see that it's quite easy, and I say that as a non-tech person. It actually is quite easy to get into and operate. You can flick a question to us, or we can get you some information back to you within a reasonable time, depending on what that information is. Council's recently embarked on a review of how it delivers its health and safety. It will also have implications for how we contract with people performing contracts for us and how they approach health and safety. So the very first presentation that we're going to have today is going to be about health and safety. I can't stress enough how important it is to the Council for its own employees, and we will be passing that on and want you to engage with us in meeting us to achieve a very positive health and safety outcome for both the community, the contractors and for Council. So I'll ask Adam White to come up here now. He's from our health and safety team. He'll give us a presentation on what some of those changes are, how they are impacted for procurement, meaning that when you're responding to a request for quote or to a tender, what the value is for you and in understanding what it is that we're after, and to give some advice on what the best way to respond to those questions is. So I'll ask Adam to come up now.
Good morning. As Paul says, I'm from the health and safety team. My role within the team is to manage and continually improve our health and safety system. So today I'll be going through the structure of our tender response form, and also introduced to the new health and safety website that Council recently launched. So, but before I get into it, I saw it important to share a bit of a personal experience to demonstrate not just what a serious incident, the impact that it has on the injured worker, but also the workers that are involved in that incident. So some 22 years ago, I was an apprentice working for Honeywell, second-year apprentice at Governor Phillip Tower. I was an electrical instrument fitter, and I was working with my tradesman who was an electrician, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and and he was up on the ladder and replacing a damper motor, and I was at the bottom of the ladder holding the ladder, and we were a bit late that morning, so he took a few shortcuts and decided not to isolate the power. At that time, he got electrocuted and fell from the ladder, and I actually caught him, and he took his last breath in my arms, and it some 22 years ago it did impact me. Fortunately, there was a lifesaver on the floor who resuscitated him, and he stayed alive until the paramedics got there, and he was taken away. On the way to the hospital, he died 3 times and was brought back to life, and he was kept in an induced coma for 2 weeks following the electrocution, and returned to work 3 months later. But over those 3 months, I, being the apprentice, was a little bit sceptical about going back and doing my work after seeing what potentially could happen. And during the investigation, it was revealed that he did have all his safe work method statements and all his documentation in order. But due to the lateness in the morning, he took a shortcut and decided not to isolate that circuit before undertaking the job we were there to do. So, it took some time to get back, for me to get back to work, and I did consider not going back and finishing my apprenticeship. But Steve is still a good friend, and he's doing well today. But it did impact me significantly, and I encourage you to don't take shortcuts. It's not worth it to you or your workers. Firstly, I'm going to go through Council's tender, the framework of Council's tender response form. This is the health and safety component of the tender response form. It's broken up into a structure where initially we're going to ask for those essential health and safety items, which are your policy and your incident, procedure and forms. Now, these are essential items. Without these items, it would be very difficult for us to engage you, as we require you to see your commitment in your policy to ensuring the health and safety of the work you're delivering and compliance with the legislation. And B, if there is an incident, we need to know that you have the tools to adequately report that incident and make council aware of it. The second part is the WHS implementation on past contracts. This is very important to us. This is something a bit different to what you've probably been asked in the past if you've tendered in the past before. There's asking for some evidence that you implemented your previous health and safety plan. In section 2.2, you provide evidence, you demonstrate capability and experience, and you provide examples on 3 contracts. We ask that you go back and have a look at one of those 3 contracts that you've provided examples on, and you provide evidence that you have a safety management plan and it was implemented, so we can see that you don't just have the documentation, but you actually use it. The third part of the structure is the WHS intentions for this contract. So this is where we require you to show your intentions, show that you are aware of the risks associated with the activities that you'll be delivering within the contract, and also provide documentation to show that you are able to deliver the works in a safe manner. We talk in this section about also your system. Now, your safety management system should align with the amount of risk in the activities your business is delivering, and also the size and scale of your business. So if you are a small business, we do not expect you to have a huge comprehensive system. We expect you to have a system that is suitable to manage the health and safety and well-being of your employees and ensure that you can deliver the work in a safe manner. The last part of the structure is the business's health and safety history. We're interested to see if you've had any notices in the past, if you had any improvement notices, prohibition notices, fines. We're more interested than the fine to see how you actually addressed them, what you actually did to ensure that those things that were brought to your attention did not occur again. We're not so interested in the actual fine, we're interested to see what you actually did to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So that is the general structure of all of our response forms for the health and safety component, regardless of whether it be construction, goods and services. It's going to follow the same structure. Okay, the next part is Council have a new health and safety website. This is a tool for all of our contractors and volunteers. It's a way that we've tried to help you understand A, your obligations, B, try to provide you with some information about important health and safety items, and C, alert you about any up and coming or safety matters that have been brought to our attention or the attention of workplace health and safety. So firstly, you'll enter the health and safety site by the bottom left-hand corner there, and the first page that you'll go to is the legislation, which is it provides a link to the Act, to the regulations, to the codes of practice, and to the standards. It also provides a brief overview as to what each of these forms of legislation and what they actually are. So please go to that page and have a look and make sure that you do understand what you are required to do as an employer and to ensure the health and safety of your employees. The second page, which is the incident notification requirements. This is very important. I think, and I even struggled with it prior to joining Workplace Health and Safety, understanding at what point you need to alert Workplace Health and Safety Queensland of an incident that's happened in your workplace. Council is interested to know every incident, near miss, even if there was no damage to property, if it was something that needs to be that could have had an effect on the health and safety of our employees, or could have caused damage to property, we're interested to know about it. We will put things in place, and we ask that you do as well, to ensure that they do not occur again. So at which point do you need to notify Workplace Health and Safety Queensland? This page here will provide you, an overview of the different types of incidents, accidents, and also provide a link to Workplace Health and Safety Queensland so you can understand at what point you need to involve them. The next page is compliance to health and safety standards. This is going to provide you a link to the standards, and also define, Council has some heightened standards. If you are currently in contract with Council, you would have recently received a communique telling you that Council have increased the standard for the outdoor clothing standard to wear all employees and contractors contracted by Council must wear long trousers. On this page here, we're going to highlight our heightened standards, but we'll also provide you a link to the Australian standards, as these are very important when you're delivering your works. The next page is the safety alerts. This page will take you to Workplace Health and Safety Queensland, and you can subscribe to receive safety alerts. These safety alerts come frequently, every couple of days or a week, and it just keeps you into the loop and up to speed with what's happening in the world of health and safety. The next page is the induction. Now, if you've worked for Council in the past and your employees are already inducted, have completed the safety induction, that's great. But when you are engaged by Council, you are required, or your employees are required, who will be working on that contract, to complete a safety induction prior to attending site. This tool here will provide an online access to council's safety induction. So prior to attending site, it's important that the workers that are going to be delivering the work on the ground have completed this safety induction. This safety induction is part of the process, and it is very important that it be completed. And I'm just before I finish up, I think it's important to let everyone know that council within the next 12 months will be audited by the regulators. Their safety management system will be audited, and it's very important that that all of our contractors are complying with their obligations when it comes to health and safety when delivering work for council. At any point, the regulators or even the council's workplace health and safety advisors could come up to you in the field and ask you to provide copies of the documentation you're meant to be carrying with you when delivering the works. I ask that you be cooperative towards the workplace health and safety advisors, and if the regulators do approach you, you be cooperative towards them as well, because this is a very important audit that we're about to embark on, and council has put a lot of effort into preparing for it. And a big part of our workforce is the contractors, or are the contractors, and we really rely on you heavily to do the right thing and deliver your contracted works correctly, and make sure you do it in a safe manner. Thank you very much for listening to me today. Have a great day.
Thanks for that, Adam. I'll move on now to Chris. He's the newly appointed Manager of Project Delivery. He's going to outline some of the bigger projects we have coming. So this is where we're moving in from telling you a bit about what we need to do to engage with us through to Chris advising on what it is that we're actually seeking to have done. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Paul. So, welcome everyone. I've been, I guess, associated with this process for quite a number of years. When I think back to the early days, when we first came together as amalgamated councillors, and I think it's been a really good process for us to be able to build relationships over the years and try and achieve the outcomes that we've set out to for the Sunshine Coast in, I guess, both designing and developing our region and then constructing those projects. I guess, you know, this is another session where we get to update all of you on what we've got going on for the year and sort of let you know what opportunities are going to be out there in a contracting sense. But it's also important to remember that even when we're constructing works, you know, with our day labour people, or we're managing a design principally out of our office, there's still a lot of sub-consultant or consultant components or subcontract components that go on with that work, where we're relying on your expertise to help us complete those works as well. So, as Adam said, we've tasked ourselves with our own safety improvement. We're on a safety improvement journey this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation as well. So, what does it look like for 18-19 for project delivery and the branch I manage? We've got 3 or 4 teams. We've got our civil projects team, our urban projects team, our rec projects team, and I'm lucky enough to have Peter here today, and our capital planning and PMO team. So the top chart on the left-hand side gives you a bit of an idea of the dollar breakdowns that each of those teams manage, and it lets you know the numbers of the projects and the value. So in total, we've got around the $112 million worth of work out of, I think, a total of around $370 million for this year's capital budget. So we don't have the whole project load, and some of that's taken up by the airport project, the new runway, the new Maroochydore City Centre, and a range of other large projects. But it's still a considerable volume of work, and you can see the project numbers there are at 425, and usually grow by the time we get to the end of the financial year once we see grants and councillors actually have some allocation funding that they put to projects as well. So that number of 425 will often be up around 650, even 700 projects by the end of the year. So there's a lot of work there, and I'm not going to stand here and profess to know about every one of those. There's just too much in the mix. But it's also a range of projects across varying different program streams, and the pie chart there shows that whole range from the transportation, the waste, aerodromes, building facilities, coastal projects, the divisional allocations, environmental, parks and gardens, quarries, stormwater and land projects that we get involved with as a team. And I guess the table on the right there then tries to break that down a little bit into numbers, and you can see that the transportation project for the region is by far the biggest share of the pie, but there's also other big areas in waste and parks and buildings as well. So that's a bit of a snapshot of what we've got in front of us for the year and the sort of dollars we're talking about delivering as part of this year's capital program. This was a chart I showed last time, and what it tries to articulate is that on the left we've got our purchase orders that we do annually by value over the last two financial years, the 16-17 and the 17-18 financial years, and you can see we've ranged them sort of everything below 250,000 to the 250 to $1 million in the orange to the above 1 millions in the grey colour. And it's been fairly consistent other than the big grey blob there that's the solar farm a couple of years ago in the million plus category in terms of orders by value. But orders by number on the right hand side, the amount of orders that we do under $250,000 far outweigh those bigger projects. And I think what that articulates is the amount of work we've got in the smaller scale work where we're dealing regularly with smaller value works where we're trying to engage and harness the power of the private sector on the Sunshine Coast and try and get a lot of that work out to yourselves and various consultancies and subcontract or contract pieces. So again, I'm expecting that'll be a big year. If you look at Council's capital program again this year, it did have a lower number in the 1140 last year, but I would expect that'll come back up and be sort of similar to the 16-17 year as we run through 18-19. So just jumping into a little bit of detail on the projects by, I guess, our team areas. This is the civil projects team and some of the projects that we'll have coming to market over the course of the year. So running through them, we've got some streetscape works in Yandina that's going to go out in Q1, Q2, and that's mainly construction works. It's one that we've actually had designed, so various probably concrete islands and things like that, and landscaping. There's the Bly streetscape, which we're going to do some detailed design and go into construction later in the year, so about $1 million there. We are trying to package projects where we can, and the next two, the GPTs, are two similar gross pollutant trap projects, one at Caloundra and one in Maroochydore, where we'd try and get the designs finished and get out for construction delivery in the first half of next year. So they're valued at about $1 million. We've got some stormwater upgrades as a scheme. We're continuing to try and improve up in Mooloolaba as flood mitigation. So there's a couple of parts of that. The first part is an $800,000 component. I believe there's more coming very late year as well for another stage section of that. We've got Creekside Boulevard, where we're going to do some work on the roundabout at Creekside as it leads up into the back of the hospital area there. Tilapia Quarter Wetlands, which is shaping inlet-outlet type structures for a wetland improvement. And some fairly decent consultancy work in First Avenue and Dewporth, where we've got some streetscape work. So we'd see that streetscape design consultancy going out and being managed through Q1 to Q3 with late construction expected at the start of this financial year and utilising the budget of next year as well. In our recreation project space, a number of projects already out to market or going out very shortly. So we've got the Cotton Tree Holiday Park Amenities building out at the moment. I think closes reasonably shortly, so that's out in the market. So the delivery of an upgraded amenities building inside the holiday park. We've got the North Shore Sports car park and the Yandina Sports car park. We've actually packaged those two together to try and make them more attractive pieces of work for contractors, and hoping that they'll be out late August so that we can deliver them. in an effective manner. We've got the Merredin Sports Complex, a lighting project there across some new facilities we're building out at Merredin at the moment, and an Isaac Moore Park at Kenilworth, another amenities building that we're hoping to take to tender in late August. In what we call our urban project space, we've got the Nambour Resource Recovery Centre coming back into design in Q1 as a tender, so a fairly decent building design there for the waste recycling facility, with construction to follow later in Q4 18-19 and into the 19-20 budget. Quite a few of our projects are split funded across that financial year change, and that's as much about trying to utilise sometimes the drier part of the year, but also the fact that, you know, we often do work around the Christmas break where everything down tools and have I suppose most of the construction going on in the middle part of the year. The Event Centre Caloundra is up for a major refurbishment, so we've got some supply and install tenders. Mainly there's some Mechalec stuff in there and a large construction package for the redevelopment of the Event Centre, so that's a fairly big ticket one for us for the year. The Mooloolaba foreshore, we're intending to try and get out and do some staged construction on the Mooloolaba foreshore, which was a project master planned about 3 years ago now, and really trying to start to bite off chunks of that Mooloolaba area improvements. We've got some, I think, photos of the bridge that's under construction at the moment, which is all part of the Mooloolaba placemaking plan. We've got aquatic plant and equipment replacements, so that's across our range of aquatic facilities, the likes of heat pumps, things like that. We've got a redevelopment going on, I think a new pool being added to the Beerwah Aquatic Centre, which would get out to construction tender in Q3 for around the $1 million mark. Continuing to work on the Nambour Heritage Tramway, so looking to, I think, provided all goes well, procure a tram and work on the construction and getting the old tramway back into action. And some Caloundra landfill, we've got a new cell going in, which we're actually constructing ourselves, but it's one of those projects where we're still needing to go to the market and look for liner materials and Mechalec components that would actually be subcontract components of the larger piece of work. There's also a range of assorted Mechalec upgrades for our council buildings and assorted consultancy investigations across the board. So smaller bits and pieces of work that we'd try and package where we can, but various other things going on throughout the year. So this slide has generally been up every time, but I think it's important that we continue to sort of advise you of what services we do have in-house or what we can do for ourselves and what we still try and get from the external market. So in terms of survey, we still have our survey capacity, but we have a mix of internal and external requirements for survey services. We don't have any geotechnical, so it's pretty much an area where we're always out seeking geotechnical work done. We've got a civil and a landscape design office, so I think we're in the order of about 50% of the design comes out of our internal design offices, and we go to market for about 50% of the program as well. We don't have capacity environmental, structural and lighting and traffic signal design, so they're always ones that we go straight to market on, and they may be components of a design that we're still managing, but we need some sub-consultant components of. In terms of civil construction, we do have a day labour arm, but I think they're again only delivering about 50% of our annual civil package of work, so we've got a fairly large component that's going to market. Landscape construction is all to market, and you've seen I've worked through a number of those ones that we're out there with, and we don't have any capacity to deliver lighting and traffic signals work, so one that we always pretty much go straight to market with. So my branch manages some of our supply arrangements, so how we get our route to market without necessarily always going to tender. And I know there's a number of probably consultancies and contractors on those panels where we can try and engage with or preferred suppliers or pre-qualified suppliers in a more direct manner. Those have got we've got open space, civil construction, playground and exercise equipment. So the first two are still live through until April next year, and then have some extensions that we can award thereafter. So they're ones that we use often. and the playground and exercise equipment, I think, has just been done and will be through to October 2020. I think it's fair to say the first two categories, the landscape and the civil construction ones, we probably have struggled to get pricing back, and we want to do some work over the next few months to try and understand from those people on those panels what might be the issues with getting return pricing. You know, is it the time of year we're asking for pricing? Is it the way we're asking? Just so that we can make them more useful to us and perhaps more attractive for the people on them to continue to submit prices through that process. So in regard to winning work with council, you know, one of the key things is relationship building. We want to work with you. We want to work with contractors and consultants who are like-minded with council, who know how we work and we know how you work. So, you know, it's always an easier process. We're also always interested in looking at the methodology of how you would do something when you quote for us, your track record, and that, I guess, goes back to that relationship building. Our drivers are certainly the safety, and we're taking a good focus on safety. The delivery certainty, you know, we do have KPIs that tie us to when we need to deliver these projects annually for the community and to achieve good value for council and its community as well. We're focused on local business still, and we'll remain committed that way, driven right from the top of our organisation. And, you know, we've got a really positive approach to, I guess, the projects we deliver for council and what that contributes to our, you know, life on the Sunshine Coast. And we're here for the long term, you know, councils generally always are. So just to finish off, I guess just reinforcing some of the things that Adam went through is that in project delivery, sorry, we'll just go back one, we have been quite focused on a safety journey over the past, I guess, 9 months and maybe longer, but we were fortunate enough to attract a really good external safety resource to the team with the guys about 9 months ago, and we've been using his expertise to take us or to help us on a safety journey. And I guess what we're trying to do is drive that right from the top. So we've got a good resource. We've set some really good targets for ourselves and our safety officers to get out on sites, do some proactive auditing. We've set KPIs for them, so you can expect to see our project officers, our inspectors, our safety officers on site doing really meaningful audits. We've got, I guess, processes underway where we're trying to work with contractors in a one-team approach. So, you know, we see this as a journey, not just us beating you over the head with a stick. You know, we want to work with you, continue to improve that relationship, and if there's ways that we can toolbox things to make improvements, that's certainly what we're interested in doing. We've been holding our own internal safety training sessions, and we're focusing on high-risk activities to try and grow our level of understanding in the area. So we're doing our own training. We're trying to toolbox that wherever we can with contractors on site. We're also developing or have nearly developed a workplace health and safety specification which tries to really easily articulate what the basic requirements are on projects that we contract with you, and that you know, it's the stuff that's in the codes of practice. So if a division representative was to turn up on site, if there was an incident, these would be the things that they would look at. So just trying to bring them to front of mind, front of the contract, and then make everyone aware that that's what we'll be looking for when we're auditing sites. So thank you very much. I'll hand back over to Paul.
Thanks, Chris. I've got a presentation coming a bit later on relating directly to procurement and some of the changes that's been made in that area. But it's important to note, and following on from what Chris has said, that we're very interested in developing sort of quarterly lists and for getting out to the market with what we've got coming. In the past, the systems that we've had have very much been when we were ready to deliver it, we'd go to the market to say we're ready now. We'd like to get an earlier engagement where we've got at least some advice coming to the community excuse me, about what work we have got coming. So we'll start to see that and develop it. It's already partially developed, but improve on it during the course of this year. And hopefully what you've seen Chris then present then becomes the equivalent released quarterly as we move forward. That's Chris presented largely on our capital works program. Council owns or is a custodian of $2 billion worth of property, all of which needs to be managed. That leads us to why Brian's here. This now is more talking about our cyclic work that needs to be done today, tomorrow. When a contract ends, it needs to be done the next day after as well. So I'll ask Brian to come up now and he'll give you a presentation on our property management.
Morning all, great to see a great turnout again. I just want to, a little bit different. So some of the stuff that Chris talks about really does look at the asset management part of buildings and facilities as well. And that's more the larger scale works that there's a full-on capital works program for. What I'm going to look at now is more to do with our day-to-day and our cyclical maintenance. So we in the property management, we've got two different areas of the branch. We've got our land management unit, which looks after all of land's assets, and then we've got the buildings and facilities unit, which is the team that I represent. We look after council's administration buildings, our workspaces, our depots, all of the sporting facilities and venues that we have in terms of buildings and the facilities that are there. Our cultural and community centres, the likes of where we are today, all of our aquatic centres, libraries, holiday parks. So there's a real variety of the buildings that we look after there. All up, we probably have about 900 different assets that we look after there. So it is a fair variety. So I'll just go through some of the projects, some of the contracts that we have coming up over the next 6 months, and then we'll look at some of the ones that are coming up in the following year as well. So just specific contracts. So the guys are currently working on the sewage pump station maintenance contracts. This will come out for public tender in the next couple of months. 21 sewage pumping stations, some sump pump units, and a couple of other things there that we'll be looking at. Also looking at aquatic centres and plant room maintenance. Aquatic centres is probably one of our largest areas of expenditure in terms of the maintenance that we do there. That contract will be in a number of different areas, so hydraulics and filtration, so looking at the actual pumps and pools itself. Mechanical services, which is more looking at the heating elements and other areas there, and the chemical dosing. So that'll come out in the next couple of months, and again that will be a significant contract for ourselves. One of our other larger contracts is security services. Currently we are remodeling the way that we look at our security, just to try and make sure that we get the best result for council that we can, and looking at some different models that are implemented with other councils and other areas of government to see how best we can do that. So we'll look at this in a 4-portion area. Security monitoring, guards and patrols, maintenance, and then security for events, for special events such as a Clounder Music Festival, that type of thing. So again, that's in preparation at the moment, and you'll see that coming through in the next couple of months. One that's obviously we have some statutory maintenance that we've got to comply with. So RCD testing is something that is currently done on a 6-month and annual basis. So a contract for that hasn't been in place before, so again we're working towards that being a contract that will be put in place, and that's a relatively low value but extremely significant importance. So that'll be coming out to public tender in the not too distant future. And a couple of smaller ones, so slashing care, so looking at basically some groundworks and grass cutting. We have a couple of areas that specific. We have some land holdings that our land management area look after and maintain. So it's looking after those, and then the other area that's of significance to us is Clounder Aerodrome, and ensuring that we keep that under control. So that'll be coming out in August. And our waste delivery service, so that will again be looking towards the end of this year, and you'll see that coming out. That's to do water tanks and water service, bringing out potable water to different areas and servicing our remote areas that we have public toilets and that type of stuff. Some contracts then that we're looking at for the following year that will come through from January on next year. So Plant and equipment, service and equipment, plant and equipment. So this is really a sort of a collective of areas that don't fit into a specific other area, but are worth having in a contract. Again, need that regular maintenance, need some statutory compliance as well. So you can read what there are: fixed hoist, lifting equipment, roof access, air compressors, and some tiered seating. So again, look for that one in the new year. Doors and gate systems. So again, similar idea. We've got some roller doors and shutters and that type of stuff. So that will come out again in the new year. Sorry, move on. Another one that's is very important, and the way that we're working, we're increasing our building management system usage across council. All of our major facilities are moving on to building management systems. So the control and the maintenance of that system is something that's very significant to us. That'll be a whole of region contract that we're in the development with, and again that will have a major effect on how we actually look after and maintain our buildings. So something that's very high on our agenda. Timber decking and batten maintenance, a relatively small contract that will come out at some stage next year. I just want to say thank you. Again, everybody has stressed the safety element. We are very committed to the safety element within property management. Our facility officers are out and around on the ground regularly. They are taking a particular interest in works that are going on. They are actively involved with all of our contractors, and they're trying to implement best safety measures and best safety practice as we go through. So you will see those guys out there. They'll talk to you. They'll reinforce good methods of work. So yeah, please embrace whenever you see them. Also like to say we've got a team at the back. If there are questions, and there are usually a lot of questions that we receive after these type of presentations, so please feel free to come and talk to the team afterwards and ask us your queries. It's a great opportunity just to understand how council delivers a lot of the contracts that we do. We've obviously talked about some specific ones here, but we have a major amount of contracts, a significant amount of contracts that are currently in place, will come up for renewal in the next couple of years, and it's just good to understand how those actually operate within council. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Following on from the last point that Brian made, Council, for any contract above $200,000 in value, publishes who we have awarded the contract to on the Council website under the tender part. I'd encourage you to use that as an opportunity for seeing who has been awarded the contracts, and also seeing if the engagement of, for example, if it is a principal contractor, would allow you the opportunity to make contact with that contractor to see if there's any subcontracting opportunities available. We have these twice a year, and undoubtedly following from them, we always get asked questions: how can I get council to buy my X item? Quite often my answer back for those is we don't actually directly buy the X item that often. It's through our engagement with a principal contractor and their subcontracting that gets those items incorporated into our works or into our workplace. So I highlight that for you to use these and the tender site as opportunities to identify suppliers to council that you might be able to supply goods and services to. I will now ask for our next presenter, who is Amanda, to come up and have a presentation to you on our business development opportunities.
Thanks, Paul. Before I go in, I just wanted to get a little gauge of the room. How many people, can you put your hand up if you actually currently work with council? Okay, so that's a good amount. Great. So I work within the business development team, and what we have is we have a local business support program. And within that program, there's a couple of things. So the first thing I'm going to get you to do is all take out your phones and take a picture of that email address, because you're going to need it in a moment. Is that clear enough, that email address? Okay, so it's businessdevelopment@sunshinecoast.qld.gov.au. So while you're all taking photos of that, what our role is, there's a couple of components for that. So one of our things that we do is our one-on-one tailored support. This is really popular. This is where we come out to your business, have a chat to you, talk about some of the areas that you want to improve your business. It might be potentially relating to wanting to do business with council. It might be wanting to increase your market opportunity. So we provide some of those connections and that opportunity for that business growth through those one-on-ones. We also have a range of workshops and events, and which also includes some online training and resources. So Chris and both Brian have both spoken about some of the health and safety topics and some of the business management systems that we look at. These are some of the 2 workshops that we offer. So some businesses come to us and say, look, I'm really eager to work with council, however, I'm not sure that I potentially have some of that capacity. Both of these workshops here are those capacity building workshops. So they're designed to be able to allow you to understand what council's looking for in terms of our systems, our health and safety, all of those kind of back of house stuff that we want to be able to ensure that businesses are getting access to these. So these are 2 really great workshops. They do sell out. They do happen throughout the year, so that we are constantly doing them. But we are very conscious that the process to be able to contract with council can be daunting. So for those smaller businesses and those mum and dad businesses and any business out there, this is available to anybody. But these are some of the workshops that we'll do. So the one-day business management system is probably the most ideal one. It goes through and talks to people about those back-of-house management systems, the safety, the environmental, the methodology stuff that we can get. So make sure you check those out. We've got information up the back in relation to all of those as well, and the dates and how you book. So the ICN Gateway, this is another opportunity for businesses. So if you haven't registered, I would encourage you to be able to register on this. This provides information on projects and procurement opportunities that are happening around the area. So you can put in your details, what your business does and the services and the products that you have, and keep an eye out for it. You can actually set up some really great alerts, notifications, so that when these come through, you'll be able to see this. So what I am going to do, now that you all have taken down that email address and you've taken a photo of that previous email address, I'll go back just in case. So what I'm going to do is invite everyone in the room to be able to send through their capability statements to this email address, and if you are watching online as well, send through your capability statements to that email address, and I'm going to hand deliver them to parts of council. So if you are offering a service and you want to, I'm going to make sure that these business areas in council get this. So make sure you do that. If you don't have a capability statement, you should, but come and see me anyway. And if you do want to connect with some of that one-on-one support afterwards, just come and see me. We'll be up the back. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. I will now move on to go through some of the ways in which council the processes it will use to procure. That means to actually end up with a contract to engage, hopefully the people in this room, through our various procurement processes. Just to be clear, council, as I think it's already been said by the Councillor Robinson before, but for this year we have a budget of $864 million. Of that, $370 million will be for our capital works projects. The largest portion of that, of course, is the runway currently being delivered up at the Sunshine Coast Airport. Last year, for the year of our available procurement spend, $221 million of it, a little over and a little under 75% of it, was expended with those considered local or local suppliers to this area. So that's a figure that we're reasonably happy with, but always looking for other opportunities to engage with our locals, meeting us with understanding the work health and safety, understanding what work we've got coming and when, and then responding to our procurement processes puts you in the best position, also puts us in the best position to get the best contractors available all of which we hope are local. Council in the last 12 months has undertaken internally a change in its procurement process. That doesn't mean we're moving away from tender and requesting quotes. That will always be central to what we are doing. But we moved from one section of the regulation that dictates how we can contract to another. Internally, that was a significant change. Externally, there are some changes, which I'll go through now. Previously, for small value contracts, those being below $15,000, we would only needed to invite one quote. That figure has now been increased to $25,000. That's not to say that we will only involve one quote, but those smaller pieces of work, particularly on our capital side, allows us to do some engaging at a relatively fast pace, or faster pace than what we have in the past. Also acknowledging, though, in selecting someone to do those smaller pieces of work, we need to understand the market and to ensure that the price that we get is a good price. And you can just about guarantee that we're only going to be able to, or intent on, inviting quotes from those who have or can deliver for us. So it will be the history in your engagement with council that represents good opportunities to deliver one in the past, develop some credibility that we can keep recorded, and then move forward with options in the future. Above 25,000 and up to 250,000 used to be a figure of 200, but now it's up to 250,000. We'll invite 3 quotes, and that's a minimum of 3 quotes. Above 250 up to $1 million, this is the newest introduction. We're going to look at it as the baseline option is inviting 5 quotes. We also have a local preference policy, which I'll get to in a second and explain to you how we will direct those opportunities to bid for work to locals, but I'll just stick with what the basic stats are now. Above $1 million, we will still be doing open tenders. Those open tenders will be advertised through the Council Alert Service and on our on the Q-Tender website, which is the framework, which is the forum through which we've done our inviting and through which you can reply and make your submissions for tenders. So that's a little bit of change in what was the business as usual for us. We also now have consolidated what previously was a fairly clunky way of forming supply arrangements. We used to have a number of forms of supply arrangements and a number of ways to do them. We've consolidated that now into having supply arrangements that we will advertise for tender, form the list, and we also have the opportunity now to refresh those arrangements. In the past, under the legislation that we did have to work with, if it wasn't working well, a supply arrangement, we basically had to start from scratch and do it again. And what that meant is if the list was getting shorter and shorter, those we could invite, some smaller list, albeit capable ones, were getting more work, and we weren't having that variety, particularly for the locals. So we've introduced now the ability to refresh an arrangement. What the refresh means is for those that are performing on the arrangement, you will stay on it and don't need to bid again, but it gives us the opportunity to go back to the market and say we're going to increase the size of this supply arrangement. Those who are on it don't need to apply. Those who want to be on it can do. And then we're only going to do that once or twice, hopefully at the max, before we start again with after a couple of years, so that everyone then gets a fresh and equal opportunity to get onto the new formation of it. How we will do that is generally through an invitation or a tender. They're the 2 basic forums, or through a supply arrangement, which would be just the invitation to respond. That requires us to issue specification, something that you can quote on, something that you can look at and say, council wants that. It comes with plans, comes with whatever's relevant to it, all in order to be able to complete the request for quote response form or the tender response form. And that's the offer, the point at which you make an offer to council to do the work that we're seeking to have done. We always list within our tender or quote response forms the evaluation criteria. I won't guarantee that it will never be anything more than that unless we specifically say it will, and it occasionally could be less than that. than the list up there, but we will be looking at price, capability and experience, methodology broken down into some of those subsets there as well, contribution to the local economy, and then we've also introduced a social benefit engagement and Indigenous engagement opportunities that I'll go through a bit further in a second. But they are our criteria. Prior to releasing a tender or request for quote, we make a decision internally on what the weighting should be for those, and then we go to the market with those. The reason that we don't have a fixed set of weightings that I can give to you is because they will change depending on the level of risk, the amount of money we've got to invest in the opportunity, what we know about the market and its capability, so that we make a decision job by job about what is valuable to us in a procurement activity to identify what is the best outcome. So that means that price won't always be the primary factor. While we want to get value for money isn't always the cheapest one, and it's not uncommon for us at all. In fact, it's reasonably regular that it's not the cheapest price that wins the work. I tell you that because you need to invest equally in responding to each of those criteria. While we're doing reasonably well with our engagement of local providers, our engagement with local suppliers, one of the failings from local suppliers is they get to the part of the response form that says, are you a local, and tell us how you are, and we end up with a one-line response that says, I'm a local, and that's it. That is very, very difficult to assess against your competing locals, as well as identifying that it is only one of the criteria for being awarded a piece of work. So when you come to that opportunity, it's a local's free hit at telling us what they do to exist as a local organisation. You will get awarded some marks for merely saying I'm a local, but if you take the time to explain that you're a local who employs this many people, who subcontracts other locals, so that we can see that the money that we invest with you will be reinvested to other locals, so that we end up with the supply chain going through our local area, you will be far more positively evaluated than merely saying I'm a local. So I would encourage everyone to take that opportunity to invest the time in not just ticking the box or saying that one-liner, but tell us how it is that you exist and what contribution you actually make to being a local provider. I've pretty much stolen my own slide by what I waffled on with before, so I'll move on from that one. But the response form is where it's won and lost. You respond to the criteria on the previous slide. They're quite clearly, or I think they're quite clearly headed. Each page has a section: tell us your price, tell us your capability and experience, tell us how you will deliver the work through the methodology. And that is your opportunity to get to the top of the list in case we're not shortlisting, or if we are shortlisting, to get to the top of the list so that the next round after the shortlisting comes back to you for an interview or for further and more detailed information. For those of you who are local, you will know we've had a local preference in procurement guideline for quite some time. We've this year introduced an Indigenous procurement guideline and a social benefit procurement guideline. The latter two won't present in every single contract that we do. We will make decisions before releasing the tender or quote to decide whether we can or whether we want you to consider subcontracting or whether we want to engage directly with providers from both of those groups. Nonetheless, even if it is not there, it will be positively regarded by Council in evaluating it if within the local preference response, which will almost always be there, that you take the opportunity, if you do have some engagement with Indigenous groups or engagement with social benefit providers, that can go into your local preference response as well. Sometimes you might actually see that we have decided that we directly want to quarantine a piece of work off to the side to be completed by one of those groups, in which case that will be abundantly clear within the response forms. Merely if you haven't done that before doesn't mean that it's over for you. what it does is encourages you to take the opportunity in the time that the quote is out, or to offer to be able to do it should you be awarded the work. You can go and engage with those groups as well. Supply arrangements, as I said before, they've been consolidated into just one term now, they're supply arrangements. We have to then have two subcategories, those that are priced and those that are without price. Depending on which one of those it is, will identify how we go about asking for the price. We will, in one instance, be asking you for how many hours do you think it's going to take, knowing what your price is. For the other, it will be a price this piece of work. That last dot point there, we established him for 2 to 4 years. The 2 to 4 really was problematic for us sometimes in the past with supply arrangements not working. So we'd have a supply arrangement, people either wouldn't be available on a number of occasions, meaning that while they're on the arrangement, we weren't getting any benefit from it. There's a host of other reasons why some of them weren't overly functional. But now that refreshing concept that I spoke of before offers us and you an opportunity. If you can reply to one, get onto arrangement and continually engage with us. As I think it was Chris mentioned before, a supply arrangement doesn't work for us if you're on it, but you're not bidding for the work that we invite you to. So some people sort of get on there to want to do work, but they end up too busy at various times. We will be monitoring that to ensure that the supply arrangement works for those on it and for council in how it operates. So if you, for example, do get an invite, you are on a supply arrangement, or even if you just get a quote, you're invited to respond to a quote not from a supply arrangement, if there's a reason you can't do the work, then just let us know that. And by that I mean send back a short email saying I'm unavailable at this time for whatever the reasons are. Quite often when some of them haven't worked well at all, we just don't hear a response at all. Don't know whether it is you didn't get it, you're on holidays at the time, too busy. It would be beneficial to both of us if we understood why people weren't responding, and if you could let us know a reason why you wouldn't, we would appreciate it. We have 29 supplier arrangements at the moment. They cover a host of capital-related activities as well as service-related activities. We have those published on our website too, what we have them for, when they're awarded, the companies that are on them. So again, if there's any who want to have a look at the list of the supply arrangements and the companies on them, if you see that there's subcontracting opportunities, feel free to make contact with those on the list. Excuse me. Part of a performance library that we've been working on is in making decisions about who we should invite, particularly for quotes, or actually invariably for quotes. We've been putting together KPIs that go into the tender and the request for quotes, assessing you against them, and then maintaining a library of performance which helps us inform the next time we might need that piece of work, who we could go and invite for it. So we would encourage you to engage with us towards the back end of the contract, and sometimes for longer term contracts it'll be periodically throughout the contract, to discuss meeting the KPIs that you will know about because they'll be in the request when it first comes out, so that both parties can understand how performance is being assessed. You might think you're doing a good job, and we do too. Everyone ticks the box. If you're struggling with something, you can let us know. If there's something that's not working from our side of the fence for you, then that's another opportunity to let us know, and we will see what we can do about that, either possibly not within the performance of that contract if it's already been set, but for thinking on how we should approach the similar contract or the next time that it's awarded. Our local preference. This has been advertised before, but because the thresholds that we previously used have changed, the way that, or the number of quotes that we'll invite has changed also. So as you can see from there, $0 to $25,000 wherever possible, and almost without exception will invite locals to perform that work. 25 to 250, we invite 3 quotes and at least 2 of them, but preferably 3 of them. So this is an internal discipline that we have. You have to use at least 2 locals. Or you actually have to, if there's some reason you don't believe that the locals have the depth to be able to do it, and there's been a couple of occasions where we couldn't just find the market. It was fairly unique markets and they just didn't exist on the coast where it's been approved to otherwise, but that would be, you could count on one hand the number of times that between 25 and 200, now 250 during a year when we haven't met that at least 2 locals, and more often than not 3. The next one is inviting the 5 quotes for that 250 to $1 million. That will be at least 3, and again, preferably 5, but our minimum standard is a commitment to advise at least 3 locals to bid for amongst 5 for that type of work, or for that value of work, sorry. For the written tenders above $1 million, they will be open to whoever chooses to reply to them. They'll be as open as they always have been, so that would be apply from wherever you are, but there will be the 15% weighting then, or minimum of 15 committed to the local content. I won't go over the local content speech that I made before, but that is your opportunity in the larger pieces of work to respond to the tender, making full value of the fact you are a local. And then for significant contracting plans, we're now required to do them in the new area that we've moved to. They'll be largely for contracts worth $5 million. That will almost be, in fact, I probably suspect they will all be offered by tender or potentially off supply arrangements. And we will have the same 15% local weighting there as well. Chris has already spoken to you about building relationships. We want to take the opportunity to speak with those who want to engage with council and provide work, but we also provide this and other forums to give you the opportunity to speak with each other, to develop those supply chains that are good for your businesses collectively, then where it's supply to council, engage with us, and then also that obviously serves the community as well. We always have this slide up here. Council still, despite moving to the new structure that we're going to, has some probity obligations that commercial entities either don't have or don't choose to follow. That's a matter of business for yourselves. We have the sound contracting principles that while they're principle-based, that means they're not overly prescriptive. They do give us some clear guidance on how we are to maintain equality and transparency throughout our tender processes, our quote processes, how about even developing a tender or quote to be released, and then how we engage with the contractor thereafter. Fairness and transparency are the 2 key cornerstones of that, and it's something that will sometimes cause us to have to say to you, we can or can't talk to you on a particular issue, or if it's during a tender process, for example, we get asked one question by someone, we will, if it's a piece of information that hasn't been made available in the information we've released, we'll let you know beforehand. If we answer this question, we have to release the question and the answer to everyone. Unless, and there is an exception to this, there is a very specific question related to how you would deliver it. In that case, we may be able to give you a direct answer. But that is an example of where, in maintaining that fairness and openness, we give everyone the same amount of information with which to develop their response. If it is something we haven't provided, we want to give it to everyone. So what you might have asked one question, put that question and the answers will go out to everyone. I've been asked over the last couple of years about our limit of liability. In the past, council almost had a guaranteed no limit of liability attempting to be placed on some of our contractors. We've developed a new framework over the last 12 months. We traditionally had people say, contractors generally just say it should be 2 times or 3 times the contract value. That doesn't necessarily work for council on our side of the fence to say that the contract amount should be tied to the limit of liability, but we have now an internal framework that has us making decisions about what the limit should be, and that limit being reasonable, having regard to the work and the risks associated with it, and we will be engaging with that throughout the course of the year. where that presents itself in the documents is we will, in the tender and the quote documents, specifically state what the limit of liability for you performing a piece of work for us should be. The other opportunities, I think that they've largely been identified by others already here, but we will be using the Tender Alert Service to advertise opportunities with us. The Queensland Government Q-Tender website has not only what this council does, but some other councils and work required by just about every state government department that there is. So that's an opportunity. If you're not registered to that, I would encourage you to be. Similarly, it's not up on the list there. I should have put Local Buy on there, or Peak Services. They are an organisation wholly owned by the Local Government Association of Queensland. They provide a number of supply arrangements for use across the state by local governments. If you just search Local Buy, or I'll have the slides updated. These slides will be available in about 24 hours after this presentation, and I'll get the link put on there for contacting Local Buy. Doing business with council workshops. Our next one is on the 31st of August. It'll be at Nambour. Registering it for it will be on our council website as well. What that specific workshop is about is pulling out our tender forms, putting in front of everyone and discussing what they mean. It demystifies it, particularly for some smaller or newer businesses, about what council's thought processes are in coming to how we quote or tender, and it's pull the document apart, talk about this, and provide some, hopefully demystifying explanations for how we go about tendering and quoting. For anyone who hasn't done work for council before, or who has but still wants to improve their opportunities for doing it, I'd recommend it as a good workshop to see. It only goes for about an hour and a half. And it might actually also help with responses to quotes or tendering with other opportunities for other local governments or government in general. Amanda's already spoken about the business gateway, so I won't go on about that. And in pursuit of our Indigenous engagement, we're also looking to engage further, encourage you to engage with the Black Business One. Doing business with council, I've highlighted. Amanda's covered those two. The second point there. The final point is, if you want some feedback, either on what your tender was like because you got work, on what your response was like when you didn't get work, either you were unsuccessful, then feel free to contact us and we will arrange to meet with you and provide that. We generally do it in a staged way, so if you ask us for some, we can give you some written advice, but if you want to skip straight onto an engagement and sit down, we're not going to sit down and tell you why the other party won. The answer to that is they will evaluate it more highly, but we will give you feedback on where we thought there are opportunities for you to improve your submission. And so, for example, if the health and safety response wasn't at a level that your competitors were with, we would explain to you that they had a better one. We might be able to tell you where yours didn't have the quality that theirs has. Simplistically too, we often get contact from someone saying, I was unsuccessful, why didn't you? And we went to the methodology part of the response and they said, we'll provide this if we're awarded the work. We can't evaluate that. So we give feedback on, if you want a piece of work with council, you'll have to invest time in committing to that work. We understand that it takes time, so we're not constructing these tenders and quotes to merely say, tell us everything. We are structuring them so that the information that you give us is valuably considered in making a decision about who we should engage with. That has brought us to the end of the list of presentations. All the questions online, okay. Slido has been responded to for those either in the room who asked questions or those who are watching streaming. So, floor's open. We can get any of the presenters back up to answer any questions that you may have. And when that's done, that doesn't mean your question and engagement time's over. Feel free to visit any corner of the room with relevant to any of the disciplines that are here today. So, thank you for coming, but is there any questions? No? Okay. Thanks. If you do have any, feel free to come up and grab us afterwards or go to the area that you think might be relevant to the question that you have. Thank you very much for coming. We'll look to do another one of these in about 6 months and release the last back half of the year's work that we have. I hope it's been beneficial to you. If you've got any feedback for us on ways we can do them better, feel free to either tell me now or let Slido know. Thank you.